Welcome to Coach Talk. I'm here again discussing different topics with different experts and professionals. I have with me today Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim. Thank you so much for joining me, Haidar.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's always a pleasure. I've worked with you on many occasions on TV, so it's actually a great honor to have you back again. I want to discuss, I know you had a book probably written about a year or two ago, right? Yes, I've got it here. I've got my copy as well. So yes, I've got it signed as well. It's really interesting because I think at this moment in time, a lot of people will find it very useful. You've got a lot of insight yourself with your own experience, and people are obviously, especially in the medical industry, they do find that it is quite stressful and anxious, but obviously with this current circumstances, it's quite extreme, and people that not normally in those positions are actually feeling that stress and that burnout. So what is your experience being out there? Obviously, firstly, I want to thank you for putting yourself out there as well. I know it's very, very difficult. Can you talk me through what it's like, and how do you even manage yourself firstly before even trying to help somebody else? Because you're obviously a coach as well as an ophthalmologist, and you've been a speaker, and you've an author. The list goes on, but it is also an effect upon yourself personally. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And the point that you make, that you have to manage yourself first. And that's what it's about here. And being in the healthcare profession, what some healthcare professionals don't get is that they don't help themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't help yourself first, you will burn out.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say in this book, really, is you've got to come first at all times. And you've got to find your...
How can you recognize that, though? Are there a certain point or a certain way? Because sometimes, especially what the health workers and the frontline workers are going through right now, it's very difficult to detect in these sort of circumstances.
Well, you need to have very close people that you trust, whether it's work colleagues, whether it's spouses, whether it's siblings, someone that you really trust. And then they tell you, Fahima, are you okay? There's something wrong going on. You're not yourself.
Right.
And when someone close to you tells you that there's something wrong with you, you have to stop. You have to stop and realize that there's something wrong with you, and that you are stressed, and that you are burnt out. So that's the first realization, that someone close to you that you trust is actually telling you that there's something wrong with you, that you're not yourself.
There's a lot of them right now. They might be in isolation. Maybe even if they have that contact, they're probably putting on a front that they're okay because they don't want to worry their family and friends. So for people even that may not have that right now, what would you advise, or what kind of steps can be taken if you were to have some sort of self-reflection or time, even with the limited time of working from 9 to 9, for example, coming back exhausted and starting the day over and over again, not really having that contact with other people, not really having that time? Are there any other thoughts and ideas that one individual that's working in the front line can actually do for themselves?
You need to stop kidding yourself.
Okay. Be realistic.
Because the longer you deny this issue, the longer you kid yourself, the longer you put on the front, it just gets worse. It doesn't get better. So the quicker you actually admit that you're having a problem, at least it doesn't build, because you're building more and more problems onto yourself.
Yeah, I guess.
So the quicker you put up your hand and say, I have trouble, the quicker you'll get help. And the good news is there's lots of help out there. There isn't a single human being, unless there's something pathologically wrong with them, personality-wise and narcissistic-wise, particularly, in this day and age of where even strangers and human beings are coming together to support each other, because they know that when you support someone, there is a reciprocating support from the other person. So you need to stop denying yourself. You need to stop playing games.
I guess that brings about somebody having quite a lot of self-awareness and insight. And I know you talk about this in your book, and you also called the third eye doctor for a reason. So people have that sort of awareness of their inner personality, inner self, having that insight, understanding oneself very, very well. And I know generally being a coach myself, when I coach lots of my clients, and some of them are in the medical field as well, it is about knowing yourself and being aware of it, and picking up on the red flags. In your book, you've got lots and lots of detail with regards to your thoughts and things that happen around you. But this is a process, because you've got like a program to help individuals. Are there any sort of like, I know it takes time, but are there any kind of quick fix to maybe get yourself in a jumpstart position to sort of start all over again the next day and do this kind of things? Because again, we cannot ignore what we're facing right now, and especially you yourself know that when you in that situation, there is hardly much time to think, there's hardly much time to eat or be healthy even. So how does one actually stop, and how does one even turn to themselves to say that I need help, and what are my options out there? Because yes, there's coaches, but that takes time. Yes, there's family, but they may not have the trained or even the empathy at times, and sometimes people may not want to hear certain things. Like, so what else could it be? Because I really want to be a bit more specific for the individual like yourself. What are the tricks that you use for yourself?
So, let's go back. There isn't sort of a shortcut or a jump start or a trick. So we can't do any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But what we can do is think each day as a new day.
Okay.
Think of yourself like the sun. The sun comes out every day and shines. So what allows you to come out and shine every day?
Mm.
And we know what makes us shine. Every single one of us has the ability to shine, and sometimes we forget about these things. So it's very easy. You get yourself a piece of paper, and you write down 20 things that makes you shine or brings that sparkle into your eyes, and do that to someone or something or some object or some cause or some mission, and then just do one little small thing that's positive
Mm-hmm.
every single day. And that's quite easy to do. And then once you realize that you can tap into this positivity around this world, you'll find that actually what's going on around you is not such a bad thing. Actually, it's just a reframe in the actual mindset that you have.
Okay.
But it starts from you, and it starts from what makes you shine. So it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, of course.
And rather than concentrate on what's going on around you, think about you first and what makes you alive.
Yeah, that's very useful information. I've also been reading up on your recent input on the Harvard University Press article, which talks about the COVID-19 pandemic and burnout in medical professionals. And it's quite shocking to hear some of the statistics even now coming out of China. I'm going to read some of it, actually. You're probably obviously aware of it, but just for the viewers. The research in China in March 2020, which is only like a month ago, which involved 1,257 healthcare workers during the pandemic. And it was reported that 50.4% had symptoms of depression, 34% had insomnia, 44% anxiety, 71.5% distress. Like I said before, I mean, a lot of frontline workers are probably not prepared for this sort of pandemic and this sort of outbreak. Even if there are consultants, and even in doing these kind of jobs, it's not necessarily on the scale as what we're experiencing right now. And obviously, you've actually added to this article with some really, really interesting sort of like concepts as to what to consider. And some of it is what you've mentioned, but I also want to add to that is you sort of saying already that there is no magic pill, and there is a process of, trying to de-stress and being compassionate with yourself and okay. And when you mentioned what you just did last, remembering your mission, knowing your why, I think that's really vital. And you also talk about being resilient. Do you think that us humans today are built for that, are taught that? I mean, I want to do an episode just on that alone. Are we actually built that? Because we might have our studies, our professions, and we'll work in a comfortable environment, but as soon as something hits us, or we hit a brick wall, or we come across some sort of hurdle, most humans find that there is a lack of resilience in our sort of teaching and upbringing. That's why especially professionals, psychologists, coaches are now more vital than ever. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think human beings are naturally resilient. That's why we've become the dominant species on this planet. And if you accept that realization, any problem that comes to you, any problem that arises at your footstep or doorstep, you know that you're a resilient being. And resilience is not anything foreign to us. It just means that you can bounce back.
Do you not think there is skill to or tools behind being resilient as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's many tools, but let's just agree on the premise that we are naturally resilient.
We are definitely capable.
And we just have to look at a young baby or a young child. They don't give up if they can't walk. They just keep going.
It's funny you say that, actually, though, because as much as children teach us that we can be resilient and we can also be fearless, because children will probably touch something not realizing and not having that. But as we grow up, as adults, we have these filters, and sometimes it serves us and sometimes it doesn't, because actually it can lessen our resilience, and also it can lessen our way of being carefree.
Yeah, absolutely. It just makes us weaker. So all these filters and all these conditioning that we have, and the older you get, the more conditioning, or the more layers that you have. So it is about the process of keep getting rid of those filters, keep getting rid of those layers, and be more childlike. And I think if we introduce this process of being inquisitive and being curious, just having those two things in your mindset all the time, just makes us really, really resilient. And it's just a matter of words. It's not an ideology, and it's not a theology, and it's not a kind of structure. It's just two interesting words, which is have curiosity and be intrigued by things. So and that just naturally makes you more resilient. We are resilient. It's just that there are certain conditions in society that want to control us, and that makes us weak. And then when it makes you weak, it makes you needy. And if it makes you needy, you'll grab onto whatever's been offered to you.
What kind of conditions? Can you give me an example as to what you refer to?
So financial conditions, religious conditions, society conditions, cultural conditions, professional conditions, career conditions. All of these are conditions. Mm-hmm. But the essence of the human being is something that's full of spirit, that's connected to something larger than yourself. Some people call it good, some people call it God, some people call it the universe. Mm-hmm. Once you know that you have that element inside of you, nothing actually controls you apart from yourself, and nothing controls you apart from that so-called divine entity. And as you know, the divine entity is something that can't really be described with words. It can be felt. So knowing that you have that within you, it makes you very resilient. But what that means is that you have to experience difficulty. You have to experience adversity. You have to experience calamity. And it's only after you experience these things do you realize how resilient you are.
Yeah, there is a thought that life has to be quite comfortable, and we're trying to work towards that. But the real growth...
That's only in Hollywood, dear.
Yes, exactly. So the real growth here...
Or Bollywood.
The real growth is actually through adversity. But I find that a lot of millennials and in this generation, it is quite difficult because things are at their fingertips. It's probably the first time the entire world is going...
That's a filter, dear. That's the filter.
What's the filter, sorry?
What you just said. That's a particular mindset filter that's been programmed onto us.
Of course, absolutely. But now we're waking up to a certain extent, hopefully, and we can learn lessons from, what's happening around us. I mean, again, going back to quickly the Harvard Press article, it did mention that a lot of things have been covered in the hospitals with regards to, makeshift sort of building hospitals and care, and also the vaccines that are trying to be sort of like coming in, I don't know how long that may be, but there are definitely tests going on, low cost ventilators. But the link between the health profession of the process, chain, and the healthcare workers is definitely sort of, a barrier there. And why do you think that is? I mean, you would assume that in that sort of medical field, is sort of medical sort of health slightly ignored, or it's kind of put to the back burner? Are you just expected to be a professional?
Well, like most industries, it's based on financial reward.
Okay.
So, the reason why the healthcare system is what it is and it's not very resilient and all that is because it's based on financial indicators and reward. It's all about money.
Mm-hmm.
So the profession has lost its way to a certain extent, particularly in the West, that it's all about money and profit. It's not about the patient. So doctors are realizing that, okay, do I really want to do this? Because previously it was all about profit.
Mm.
So you will get a lot of doctors and healthcare professionals and nurses and what have you who are questioning their original why. Because if their why was a financial why, then it's not worth continuing with it, which is why a lot of doctors are burning out and they have to deal with this existential issue. So they are forced to ask that question about their existence. And a lot of them will say, no, I'm not willing to go there. And it's the same with all the other careers. But because you're in a healthcare profession, you are put on the front line.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other professions have withered away and are hiding in their homes. So for them, it's fine to sit in their houses because they don't have to be on the front line and do all the difficult jobs. So that's why doctors are having a tough time right now.
No.
Because, the majority, maybe not the majority, but a lot of them are in that profession because of the financial incentive, because of the society incentive, and also because, they've had a sort of a family tradition to be there. So that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that. This article was quite short, but it actually gave me quite a lot of detail and insight. And I obviously always read between the lines. I mean, even it stated that recently, according to the Associated Press, apparently 2 nurses even committed suicide in Italy over the burden of the crisis, on the frontline workers. So it is something that we do need to consider in the future and take serious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether,
whether that's true.
I mean, I don't know whether your viewers know, but the suicide rate of doctors is on average 2 to 4 times the suicide rate of the general population.
Wow.
So that's always
aware of that, to be fair.
Yeah, so that's always been the case. So, if you are considering going into healthcare, the rate of mental illness and suicide is exponentially high. But now, because it's brought everything to the forefront, and everyone's talking about healthcare, everyone's talking about doctors, and you see the doctors are absolutely stressed out, and that's stressing out the whole population.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's a reflection of our general society, and that's the reason why people are having existential crises, because all we've done to the planet is abused it. So this is the planet's reaction to the human race. It's, well, you guys are abusing me for the last 150, 200 years. This is your reward. This is Mother Nature paying you back. And whether you deny that or not, whether you slow down or not, whatever you do, you won't win. So what's this making us realize is actually we are here as guests. We are here on this planet to live with this planet, not for the planet to live for us. And that's quite hard for some people to swallow. And the interesting thing is how the environmentalists have all gone quiet.
Mm.
You know, there's no talk of the environmentalists. There's no talk of the low carbers, the political correctness, social justice warriors, because they realize that actually all what they were talking about is very superficial and is very nonsensical and it's non-reality. And the reality is that this human race has been killing this planet, and this is the planet's reaction. And, you know, the brain of the planet is bigger than all of our collective brains. So who's going to win? Nature is.
Absolutely. It's also listening to you speak. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree to an extent. But obviously, you know, with humans, we like progression. We like to increase in technology, and a lot of us now, unfortunately, especially politically and economically, it's all towards materialism, and even more so. But we are living with literally just essentials, basics, and everything taken and stripped away. And how adaptable are we? Such a lesson for us all. But just say tomorrow or in the next coming weeks, you know, we are going to finish this lockdown and we're going to go back to normal. Like, what is going to be our norm, and what is norm? And as you said, you know, we expect, you know, sort of, you know, the earth and the environment to live for us, and we have to live for that. I guess, you know, it is a lot to consider, but I'm even thinking, and, you know, outside my own self right now, as to what changes would I make and how would I move forward. And are we all going to be doing this? Because we very much, we know, as history shows, we have these sort of, maybe not on this wide scale as what we're experiencing now, but in life we have these sort of like challenges, but it doesn't take us long to go back to the norm. But do you think something like this might actually make a difference to certain individuals, where we will be changing lifestyle and making different choices that's going to be a bit more considerate, or we're just going to go back to normal very soon by the end of the year?
No, I mean, I think there will be no more normal. I think everyone is going to change from this some
In
way or
what way?
another. And it really depends on how much you're going to embrace this, and how much you're going to deny this, and sort of how you're going to gloss over things, so to speak. But people are realizing that if they gloss over it, it's not a good idea. You got to pretty much accept what happens to you
Mm,
and find ways to be as real as possible to yourself. And that's the only way really to move forward from this, because people are realizing that, you know, there's no hiding spaces anymore. And I'm going to take the positive route from this, in the sense that people are realizing that how their lives was very superficial and superfluous, and actually, I don't want all of these things, and even my needs are not that much either.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
then you start thinking, well, okay, if I don't have that many needs, how can I change myself, change my outlook, and actually reach out to people who empower me, reach out to people and things that may make me stronger and bigger and better and brighter. And that's what people are going to realize from this. What's harming me, what's useless, what's superfluous, and then what do I really need? And then, you know, if you can describe that on a piece of paper, I think that will put you in a good stead for the future. But no, things are never going to go back to what it used to be, for sure. Definitely. I mean, it's like, you know, being in a relationship,
Mm.
something drastic happens. You don't go back to the same relationship.
Well, some people do.
Well, they're making a mistake. They're making a big mistake. And the only person that they're harming is who, Fahima?
Yes, of course. I mean, I totally
Themselves.
agree. Yeah. But we think
So,
yeah.
you know, it's not going to, and look, go back, you know, I mean, it doesn't affect me one bit, to be honest,
Yeah,
you
no,
know.
it's just giving insight to everyone. I mean, I also, at the moment, I'm dealing with a lot of relationship coaching at the moment, aside from the usual mental health and, you know, these kind of things, but relationship and career, but relationship takes the top no matter what the situation is. And especially now, when people are faced with each other 24/7, they're getting to know who people are really are in their household, in their families, where they probably spend, you know, not much quality time together. They are forced to stay with each other and get to know each other. it is taking a toll on people, and it's quite sad in a way, like how we've moved over the last decade of not able to look after our kids, not being able to be with our spouses and siblings, and be in a family unit in a household, which normally it's like it's the norm to live together, to be together, to be in each other's spaces. But now it's become an issue, a real challenge. And as a coach, I'm finding that really hard to grasp as well. There's like all this self-help out there for being with your kids, spending time with your kids, because we've changed the society to constantly work, both parents, and not giving the time, or the nannies looking after them. Their kids are more familiar with that, and or the teachers and things like that. So it's really opened up a lot of questions for me, by the way, and I'm sure it has for you too. And I kind of do things old school regardless of my age, and might even be old school, but that's not the point. That real essence is kind of like coming back, and people are struggling with it. They're really struggling with it. How are you?
Initially, yes. I mean, initially, yes, but they will find their way back again. So, I don't have any. I'm not worried if that makes sense.
Well, you are in a different situation because you do homeschool your kids, and you have done
Yeah.
so for many years. You are not the norm in that sense. Probably, in a good way. In a good way.
Of course. Yeah. No,
So you
as
are
you know, being normal is not good. So
exactly. It's but I'm just thinking about things outside how they are and what people are coming to me with, and it's really.
but they'll get used to it. I mean, when we first started homeschooling, it was foreign to us as well. But then after a few months, a year or two, it's become second nature. So I think it will take a bit of time, but if they can bounce back and start looking at the things that uplift them and bring them together as a family unit, and start just listening more and yapping less, I think it'll make a big difference.
Yeah, but even I've done a lot of research, and even recently, the highest divorce rate is now coming out of China's pandemic as well. So there is.
Well, that's a good thing, to be honest. I mean, whereas before they were in bad relationships, which went on for years and years and years, and it wasn't getting them anywhere. So at least now they're forced to make a clean break and move on. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, absolutely. It's good that you can always look on the bright side, is what I would normally do. But it's good to highlight this for everybody. I mean, these are things that's going to come to us and hit us eventually in the next coming weeks and months. And we're going to look back at this as well. So in a way, it's kind of preparation. I mean, you sort of like enticed me to do these shows by saying, when am I coming on your show? And I'm like, what show? I'm not on TV. And, you kind of gave me the inspiration, which I thank you for. And I figured out on my own, with help, but to do on my own as well, how to do these.
I'm an enticer.
Yeah, well, an influencer, kind of something like that, given me the idea to spark me doing this. But I wanted to do something like this because, again, there's so much information out there. And I remember you recently posting, I don't know if it's real or not, but you came out of Facebook because of all that information. It was kind of overwhelming. Yeah.
I mean, it was all very negative. I mean, it was all. I mean, I got really stressed when it first started. I got the infection. I was, in a bad place, and I thought, do you know what? This isn't working for me. I've got to stop this. So I've stopped my TV subscription license. Right, I'm not listening to any of the main mainstream media. So I've switched off of that radio antenna, and then I've started switching on the positive radio antenna.
What is the positive radio antenna?
Well, it's a kids program, so we can't really, exactly talk about.
Okay.
But that kind of stuff. So that gets me up, and also just reaching out and having these discussions with people, and being on radio and being on TV, and writing and just creating. So that's what I've been doing.
I get that. I don't want to sound judgmental here, but I want to put something across to you, because I'm quite surprised you actually did that. I thought someone maybe I'm just assuming, in a different way, that you could actually get all of that news, negative or not, and actually cope with it and maybe ignore it instead of coming out completely. Because I find that, personally, yes, there are a lot of
I've
negative.
got the wrong friends on Facebook. I think that's the
Okay,
thing.
that's probably why then. Except for me, of course.
Of course, of course. So no, I just whereas I mean I find on LinkedIn it's better
Yeah.
because I think there's a bit more of a professional thing. But then I've become very unprofessional on LinkedIn, so I've turned my LinkedIn into a Facebook.
Okay. 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 I thought you got on there as well. You got off there. I was like, no, you can't see any of my shows then. How am I going to link to you?
No, I mean I've stopped my Facebook, and I've sort of transferred my personal Facebook stuff onto LinkedIn. Plus, I'm still doing the podcast, so the podcast is still going.
Okay. And what is your podcast about generally? Is it like random, or is it a specific sort of reason why you're doing that? And you talk to health professionals?
Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I did my podcast, because when I was having stress and burnout and suicide, it was actually the podcast got me out of my mind. And the reason why I like podcasts, it just gives you an alternative perspective into things. Because once you get out of your own perspective and look from another person's perspective, it does open your mind, and it does make you much more understanding rather than judgmental. So that's why I started my podcast, because I found it really interesting and really therapeutic on my side. So, I'm a kind of a spiritual guy, if that makes sense, because I like the hidden and the unseen and the metaphysical rather than just the literal and the superficial. So yeah, I mean, I mainly speak.
People say they're spiritual, but does it mean different to different people? Is there a difference
Yeah.
between spirituality and religion?
Yeah, I mean, it's different things for different people. I think, it's good to understand all those words and what it means for different people. And even religion has many meanings as well. It's not just, oh, that's religion and that's spirituality. I mean, so there's a whole host of meanings for all these words. And I think if we understand them all, or try to understand them all, and just be curious about them all, I think that's a good thing. So that's why I started the podcast. And, I'm a nosy bastard, basically.
Okay, I like to use the word curious more as being a coach.
No. I like to say I'm a nosy bastard. I'm really interested in people.
Well, no, I agree. I learn a lot. Not that part. Sorry, I learn a lot. I agree about you having podcasts and learning from other people, because I used to do shows myself where I was the one mainly speaking, and I did that for a while, which was great. And there comes a point
you still do that now.
I do, but I do invite other people to have their perspectives as well, even though people think I'm fighting with them. I'm not challenging anyone. I just have a different way of thinking, and I do kind of bring things out of people that they wouldn't normally expect,
because your nose are long, that's why.
Whichever way you want to define it, that's how it is. But regardless, yes, it's good learning. It's good to open up. It's lovely to connect with different types of people. And it does open up a different way of living that you wouldn't normally sort of see. And I'm quite fortunate to be connected to some amazing people like yourself as well. And, over the last few years, it's been unbelievable. And I hope to connect with more. But no, I mean, this conversation really, it's really about, you yourself as well as, some sort of like frontline worker, because you did actually do work after you came out of isolation, right? And
yeah. So yeah, I mean, initially I was quite apprehensive because I was still in that kind of whole, media kind of frenzy. But when I went back to work, it was just like any other day. Okay, we had to restrict ourselves in terms of physical distancing. You see, I don't use the word social distancing because I think it has a particular psychological detrimental effect. So, I physically distanced, from my colleagues, but, the banter was there, the enjoyment was there, and the laughter was there. So really, it was pretty much business as usual. And so some of the patients, you can see that they had a high level of anxiety coming in, more than the normal. But they saw me. I was taking it well. This is the new the new norm for us now. This is the new ideal speed that we have to run at. Let's work with it. And then when they saw that I was actually okay, they became okay.
Well, they were lucky and fortunate because you are a coach as well. So you do have that way of, making people feel that comfort and having that rapport.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about coaching is that you work in the present and you move forward.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important. Okay, this is our present, and let's be mindful in the present. And at the same time, how can we make the future better? And I think by having that kind of outlook, they felt quite positive about it as well.
Brilliant. But I know generally, even when I go to see the optometrist, I know you're the ophthalmologist, but still you have to get quite up close and personal when you're looking in the eye. So how does that work now for you? What's the distance there? Because yeah, you do. It's like, when
I just touched them. Yeah, I mean,
no, seriously.
Yeah, I just fill them up and touch them and have a good time.
This is on YouTube. It's going out to everyone. So.
Let them, give them a good feel and let's send them on their way. I mean, some of them are really sensitive.
I was going to
say. But once they get the feel and the vibe, they come along.
Okay. So there's not much changes then in your sort of like
not really.
practice. Okay, fine.
I mean, we have visors.
Oh, that's what I mean. Okay, so
yeah,
something like that. That's what I'm trying to
say. But that's because of managers, not because of me.
Of course, but you have to take those precautions. That's what I'm trying to say. Because normally, they come straight up close to your eye to actually see, what's going on in there and test you.
But if they touch me, that's fine. I touch them, and it's all good fun.
Okay, this is Dr. Haidar, the coach as well, that's speaking. But no, I'm sure you have all the precautions in there, and people are not going to be afraid to come in and have their eyes tested. Or
don't be afraid of me. You can come at me at any time.
Cool. Right, so we're coming towards the end of the conversation. It's gone by so quickly. Obviously, when we're having fun, it goes really quickly, and our conversations really, really do go really fast. What would you like to say finally to the people out there, whether they're frontline workers or just everyday people? What's the consideration, or what's something that you might want them to take away from this conversation?
I would like to say that there's always hope.
Okay, there's always hope. Yeah, I mean, it's simple, it's sweet, and as a coach, that's the best way to move forward. I myself would like to sort of say that I just want to thank you very much for what you do and also taking the risk. I hope you and your family are well and you continue to stay well. I really appreciate your time. And again, dear viewers, thank you so much for watching. I hope that has been some sort of like insight here where you can take away and get some learning, knowledge, and maybe some awareness as to how to act and behave. Yes, please order this. Is it on Amazon right now?
Yeah, it's on. I mean, the only good thing about this thing is that Amazon's still working.
That's true. So yes, well, you're still working. Amazon's still working.
Yeah, you're still working.
Dr. Haidar, yes, I am still working. Obviously, I'm coaching a lot of clients, privately and doing this at the same time. So yes, my work is very busy right now. But I always have time for people's comments. And if you want to please subscribe or share, that would be really appreciated. And hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Haidar, very much for coming on the show today.
See you in the flesh, as they say.
Definitely.